Hi folks, welcome back to another video. This time round I am going to be painting Luke Skywalker in his Snowspeeder outfit from the Empire Strikes Back. Now this has been printed in 1/6 scale. I have cleaned him all up, primered him in a nice grey, but the base is still the raw plastic because I'm going to come in and I'm going to do something to that to change it a little bit. This is from SW3D. I think you guys by now probably know who they are. I've been looking forward to getting this one done. It's been on my list for a while. So without any further ado, let's get cracking. Now I'm going to start the model with the largest area, which is the orange jumpsuit. So for that I'm going to take some Hot Orange by Vallejo, and I have thinned this down with a little bit of water so it goes on a little bit easier, and I'm just going to apply this all the way across the clothing. Now this is a bit of a thin paint, as most oranges are, so I'm just going to do probably 2 coats of this just to make sure I get decent coverage. Next up I'm going to make a wash to go all over that orange, and for that I'm going to take a couple of drops of this Rhinox hide. So I'll just put a couple of drops there in my mixer, and then all I'm going to do is mix this up with a fair amount of water. And then once I'm happy with that wash, I'm just going to apply this all over the orange. So I'll just test that to see a bit more water. Just test it on a bit of kitchen towel. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. And it's a case of just slapping it all over. Now what this will do, it will darken down and sort of grubby up the clothing a little bit, but it will bring out some of the detail in the recesses and around things like the stitching, that kind of thing. It'll take a little while for this to dry. I just need to make sure it doesn't pool too much in certain areas as it dries. Now with that wash all dried, what I'm going to do next is an all over dry brush using some of this orange fire. So this will just bring the colour up a little bit and also just kind of tidy up where some of that wash is kind of stained a little bit too much. And then just to sort of show you a quick comparison and really the power of sort of dry brushing, this leg is the before and then that side is the after. So you can see a sort of dramatic difference there. It's much cleaner, much better looking, and just adds so much more depth. And that's why I love dry brushing. Now for his pouches and belt, I'm going to start off using a base coat of Rhinox hide. And then that is followed with a dry brush using some Mournfang brown. Now mixing a touch of leather brown into that previous brown I just used to dry brush, I'm just going to go over some of the edges on creases on some of the more sort of torn up parts of the leather. And then finally some gunmetal silver across the belt buckle and all the little rivets on the belt. Turning to the boots, I'm going to start off with some neutral grey, and this is going to go all over the tops of the boots. The actual bottoms of the boots are actually a different colour. Then for the bottom part of the boot, which is sort of a tan colour, I'm going to use some of this Sandry dust. Then I'm going to cover the entire boots with that brown wash that I made earlier. So both the grey parts and also the light brown parts. I've added a touch of white into that original neutral grey I used, and I'm going to use this new mix as a dry brush. That is then followed up with a dry brush using some of this Moorcast bone. Now for the straps around the legs, I have mixed up 50-50 of that deck tan and some bold titanium white, just to give me a slightly whiter deck tan. Next up, I have mixed some black with a bit of neutral grey, and this gives me a nice little charcoal type colour, and this is going to be perfect for this band that goes around his leg. And then finally, it is the silver of your choice for these canisters. I've gone for Oily Steel by Vallejo. And then using some soft pastel, I'm just going to come in and just dirty up these parts a little bit, and also work some of this into the recesses. Taking some deck tan, I'm just going to base in the chest piece. Next up, I have mixed a very weak black wash, so barely any paint in it at all, and I'm just going to run this across all of the white pieces. Mixing equal parts neutral grey and black, I've made a nice sort of charcoal colour, and this is going to be for the straps across the chest, and it's the same colour I'm going to use for the strap across the leg. Then it's a dry brush using some pure bold titanium white all over the chest piece, and also the straps that go around the legs as well. Now onto the gloves. I have mixed up a neutral grey with quite a lot of bold titanium white, just to really give me a very, very light grey. And this is going to be my first base coat across the gloves. Next up is some somber grey, and this is for the little box on his chest. Next up is some pure brilliant white, so just following reference material, I can see that there are some white outlines around some of the consoles, and there are also a couple of white buttons. Next up is black on this large panel. Next up is some magic blue for the two little buttons here. And then finally it is some lead belcher silver for all these little dials. Now for Luke's blaster, I'm just going to start with an all over base coat of black. Followed by a dry brush using some dark grey. And then for the handle of the gun, it's a little bit of Mornfang brown. And then for the muzzle of the gun, it's lead belcher silver. And using that same silver, I'm just going to put in a few little notches and scratches here and there, just to give a slight bit of battle damage. That is then followed with a wash of Nuln Oil. Using a brown wash, I'm going to then run some of that into the recess of the gun handle. Okay, turning to the head, I'm going to mix equal parts of Deck Tan and Jaquera Orange, and what this does, it will give me a nice peach type colour, which is perfect for a starting base colour of skin tone. Next up is an all-over wash using some of this Reichland Flesh Shade. Now this stuff is pretty strong in tone, so what I tend to do is just thin it down with a couple of drops of water. And this is just going to go all across the face. I'm now going to repeat that process, this time using a blue, a Drakenhof Nightshade, and again this is very dark blue, so I've heavily watered this down, and again it's just a case of applying this all over the face. And then finally the last wash is Cassandora Yellow, so the same thing, I have thinned that down, and again just slap this all over the face. That is then followed up with a dry brush using Cadian Flesh Tone. Next up for the lips is a little bit of Bugman's Glow, and I've mixed some of that Cadian Flesh Toner with it just to soften it down a little bit. And you can also use this mix to sort of highlight any areas on the face, any sort of scars, any sort of bumps, lumps, moles, that kind of thing. Next up for the white of the eyes, I've just mixed some very light grey and some white together. So I don't want a pure white, I want a sort of a slight off-white grey. Okay, that's the easy bit done. It gets slightly more tricky now. I'm going to use pure black and I'm going to go in and dot the whole iris. Now on this one they are actually sculpted in, so I'm going to hopefully use that to my advantage. Okay, so that is the eyes put in for the start. I'm not convinced having the eyes sculpted in helped all that much, really. I think I would have preferred just to have done two blobs in the centre as I normally do, but nevertheless, there you go. Right, next job is then to put the blue of the irises in. So for that I've mixed up some Stegodon green scale and a little bit of white. And this is just going to go in the centre of each one, trying to leave a little bit of that black outline around the very perimeter. Okay, now it is back to black to do the pupil in the dead centre of each eye, trying to leave most of the blue still on show. Now that took me a couple of attempts, I'm not going to lie, but I think they're pretty much where I want them to be. So the very final thing, just to finish off these eyes, is just get a bit of pure brilliant white and just do a dot in each one just to do a slight bit of added reflection. Like so. So let's give this guy some hair. So we're going to use Baler Brown for that. I'm going to use this on all over the hair and also the eyebrows as well. I'm then going to follow that with an all over shade of Seraphim Sepia to try and sort of darken down all the recesses of the hair. And try my best not to get any of this on the skin. That is then followed with a dry brush of yellow ochre. Turning to the helmet, I'm going to start with a base colour of Deck Tan. Okay, next up I have mixed together these three paints, a very small bit of orange into those two yellow contrast paints, and I'm going to use this for the lens across the helmet. So as you can see, I have base coated it in white just to give me a nice undercoat, and then I'm just going to run this across the whole thing. Okay, so while you guys weren't looking, I have actually gone ahead and painted in all the black parts, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is paint in the yellow detail. So I've added a little bit of that mixture that's still drying on the lens there into some dark yellow, and I'm just going to follow some reference pictures and start dotting this in. Next up is some corn red for all the red parts. Okay, we are starting to get somewhere now. So that is the yellow, the red and the black applied. Now what I did do, if I can get a brush as act as a little pointer, around the symbol I actually did a line of black. Now it takes a bit of a steady hand to do. It is raised to help you with that little bit, but that really has helped just sort of neaten that up and blend it in well. It doesn't stand out anywhere near like it did before, so it looks a lot more natural. Anyway, last colour to go on now. So I have mixed up a dark and a light grey, and this is going to be on, but again, a bit of careful brushwork here to add. There's a stripe along here, and there's also very thin trim all around. And with that grey applied, that is the helmet finished. Now, I must confess, I did miss a few areas and had to go back. I didn't do the back initially, and I got a couple of colours wrong here. So these little sort of circles are red towards the back rather than yellow. But I think I've corrected everything. A little bit of silver on the mic there, and I should be good to go. So what I'm going to do next is satin varnish the helmet. So I'm going to cover the whole helmet with this stuff. And then what I'm going to do, once that is dried, I'm going to come in and do some weathering. Now the reason I want to use this varnish is because I want to change this to a slightly more sort of plasticky reflective look, so it looks more like an actual helmet, and so it won't be the same sort of matte finish that the glove and all the clothing is. Okay, so next I'm going to dirty down that helmet a little bit. So I've made a little mix using Agrax Earthshade, Rycon Fleshshade and water, sort of equal parts of each. Now, as you can see, the helmet has had time to dry, so it's looking a little bit more sparkly than it was before, which is fine. Now, it will go slightly more matte after this. That's just the way it works, but that varnish will also make sure that when you slap this on, you can take it off quite easily if you apply too much. So I'm just going to sort of throw this over, give it a couple of sort of seconds to hit in the recesses, and then I'm just going to sort of take a sponge, just dab off parts here and there. That's just a case of repeating the process until you're happy, really. And using that same wash, I'm also going to apply this all over the gloves. And just like with the helmet, I'm going to come in with a sponge and take off most of it. Now, as a final bit of weathering, I'm taking some black soft pastel and I'm just working it into various parts, just to darken areas I want to add a bit more depth to. Now, if I look at reference pictures, the actual helmet he's using is really, really battered. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me, considering he's supposed to be inside a cockpit whenever he's wearing it, but there you go. So it's really up to you how heavy you want to do this. I don't think I'm going to go too much heavier than I've got now, just a little bit here and there, and I think I'll be done. So for the base, I want to change it up a little bit. As you can see, it's a kind of a snowy base, and then there's like a sort of miniature Snowspeeder hidden among the snow. I sort of get what they're going for, but it doesn't quite look right. I mean, if that Snowspeeder was sort of done to scale, it might look quite good if you sort of stood on the canopy or something. But to me, it just doesn't quite make any sense. So what I'm going to do is essentially just cover this over and just to make the whole thing look like snow. And for that I'm going to use some of this quick drying poly filler. I'm just going to cover it over. I'm going to use a few of these sort of 3D printed sculpting tools just to sort of smooth out the edges kind of thing, to blend it all in, and then hopefully it will be, all traces of the Snowspeeder will be gone and it'll just look like snow. Now that polyfiller has had time to dry, it should have gone pretty rock hard, and you can also sand it back a little bit here just in case you want to sort of sculpt it to a little degree. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to now go off and prime this. As you can see, I have sprayed it predominantly black just to get all around the side and also underneath as well. I've just put a few of these felt pads down just to make it nice and secure. So what I'm going to do now is paint in the snow. So of course, no surprises, I'm going to use some bold titanium white just to get all this tidied up properly. Next up is some Track and Half Nightshade, and I've thinned this down. It's probably 20% of this, 80% water, and I'm going to slap this all over the snow just to give it a slight blue hue. So after that blue wash has had time to dry, it's time to come back in with a dry brush of pure brilliant white again. And then finally I just used a combination of light and dark bronzes for some of these detailed bits around the edge, and then just threw a black wash over to bring out the details. Okay, so that is the base all finished. So that is all the model parts done. So I'm going to go off and put this all together, and I will come back and show you the finished result. And that is a wrap on Luke Skywalker. So I'm really quite happy with this one. Had a lot of fun painting it. It was quite enjoyable, challenging in parts, and I'm really happy with the result. So thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. I post videos every now and then. I can't always promise they come out all that regularly. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of them, you want to probably hit the notification bell. That way you'll be told when I upload. So with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.